Welcome to the Buffalo Sports Conversation Room. I'm your host, Jamie Malloy, and I'm ready to talk some Week 14 football. But first, I'd like to bring on my co-host, Joe Dalio. So without any further delay, here's Joe. Hey, Joe, how's it going?
It is going great, Jamie. How you doing tonight?
Good. How about you? We were just talking about backstage how it was a disappointing outcome in the Bills-Rams game, and certain things didn't go their way, like the punt block and not covering Kupp and Nacua, but they did manage to make a game out of it.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but I was thinking the same thing. You know, they could have got blown out of that game. They didn't, and they made a game out of it and gave themselves a chance to win. So they didn't, but again, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But, you know, things are going good. Some things that are not going good. We're getting another foot of snow coming to Buffalo the next couple of days here. We just can't get rid of the stuff. But the Bills aren't playing here this week, and we'll talk about that as well.
No, they'll be going into the Lions Den, if you know what I mean.
Into the Lions Den. And ironic that, you know, we're getting a big snowstorm here. A couple of years ago when we got a big snowstorm, they were forced to play a game in Detroit. Granted, not against the Lions, but kind of ironic that we got the same situation here, except they are literally going into the Lions Den against a bunch of hungry Lions.
Yep, exactly. Anyway, are you ready? Speaking of those pesky Lions, are we ready to talk about the Thursday night matchup between the Green Bay Packers taking on the Detroit Lions to clinch a playoff berth at Ford Field?
Yes, let's talk about that.
Okay, so here we go. With 9:41 left in the first quarter, David Montgomery, Alabama, ran it in for a 3-yard touchdown, and the Lions led it 7-0. With 13:01 left in the second quarter, my fantasy kicker and my favorite UFL kicker from this past season, Jake Bates, kicked a 43-yard field goal to bring the Lions lead to 10-0. With 5:35 left in the second quarter, Josh Jacobs ran it in for a 1-yard touchdown to cut the Lions lead to 10-7. With 11 seconds left in the half, Jahmyr, not Joe Gibbs, but Jahmyr Gibbs, caught a 2-yard touchdown pass to close out the halftime score at 17-7 Detroit. With 13:15 left in the third quarter, Tucker, the dressing his craft, caught a 12-yard pass from Jordan Love, or Jordan Sunday kind of Love, to cut the score to 17-14 Detroit. With 11:50 left in the third quarter, Jordan ran it in for 6 yards, bringing the score to 21-17, Green Bay with its first lead of the game. With 5:02 left in the third quarter, Tim Patrick caught a 3-yard pass from Jared Goff, bringing the score to 24-21 at the end of the third quarter. With 14:20 left in the fourth quarter, Jacobs had a 4-yard rush, scoring his third touchdown, bringing the score to 28-24 Packers. With 8:39 left, Patrick hauled in his second touchdown from Goff to put the Lions back on top, 31-28. With 3:38 left, Brandon McManus tied the game with a 32-yard field goal, knotting the score at 31-all. The Lions' Jake Bates kicked a 35-yard field goal as time expired to give Detroit the win and clinching a playoff berth with a score of 34-31. So, Joe, what do you think about the Lions still finding a way to win, even with all their defensive players hurt once again?
Great teams find ways to win. And this is the type of game you're supposed to have with two excellent football teams. And certainly we got our money's worth with this one. It's one of those classic back and forth games. Either team had a chance to win in the end. And again, the Lions are the slightly better team here and or maybe much better team, who knows. But they pulled it out. And, you know, there's certainly no guarantees come playoff time. But, of course, the Lions are a Super Bowl contender here. Now, the Lions kind of got the better of the stats anyway. They had like about 90 overall more yards. They the time of possession was like 36-24 in the Lions' favor. But so give credit to the Packers here for staying with the Lions here and giving themselves a chance to win. And they were, as you said, in the lead, with a chance to win throughout. And give credit to the Lions. They finally got it. They got it done. They got the final kick there. And, good win. No shame in the Packers losing this. And in fact, Josh Jacobs continues to get better with them. 3 touchdowns in the game. So one of those games that kudos to the Lions for making the playoffs. We all knew that was going to happen anyway, right? I mean, I think they're going to, be looking for bigger and better things here. But the Packers are a team that can get in their way later on. And if they end up meeting in the playoffs, those divisional opponents always cause problems. There's no guarantees for the Lions here. But certainly they've taken their first step here and got themselves into the dance.
Yep, exactly. And what do you think about like you said, I think you already answered this, but what do you think about the Packers putting up a much better fight playing the Lions this time than in the first game, in the first matchup?
Yeah, I think the Packers have matured a lot since then too. And now did they have, I don't know how long ago they played the Lions. Was Jordan Love with them in that game?
Yeah, he was, but
He
he
was
was still recovering from that ankle injury, and he didn't look 100% healthy in that game.
Right. So, you had that going on, and he was still recovering, and the Packers were still trying to figure things out at that time. But I think they've figured those things out now, and they're going to be a team to be reckoned with. I don't think it'll happen, but don't be surprised if the Packers end up in the Super Bowl somehow. Again, they wouldn't be my first or second or third or maybe even fourth pick to get there in the NFC, but they can get in somebody's way. And if they hit a streak, there's no reason to think they can't get there.
Hey, look at what they did against the Cowboys last year at home as a 7th seed. And they won the wild card game, and they were Anders Carlson field goal away from possibly eliminating the 49ers too last year.
Yeah, that's right. They did make some noise in the playoffs, and I wouldn't be surprised. And that experience may come in handy too. They know that they can win on the road, and they're going to be playing games on the road here in the playoffs. So they have that experience, and I think that came in handy. So
and I think sorry, go ahead, Joe.
They're going to have a very tough opponent no matter who they play, whether it's the Lions, whether it's the Eagles, the Seahawks or whatever. So they're going to have a difficult opponent and a difficult place to play regardless. But I wouldn't put it past them to beat one of those teams.
Yeah, like I said, they could take advantage of the fact that as of recently, like the NFC hasn't really been that good of a conference compared to the AFC too. So if they could take advantage of a weaker conference in the playoffs, who knows?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So moving on to the Sunday 1:00 showdown between the 3-9 but battle-tested as of late Carolina Panthers taking on the 10-2 Eagles led by Saquon Barkley.
Mm-hmm.
With 1:09 left in the first quarter, Eddie Pinheiro hit a 39-yard field goal to give the Panthers a 3-0 lead early. With 11:48 in the second quarter, Jalen Hurts so good pushed his way into the end zone to bring the score to 7-3 Eagles. With 4 minutes left in the second quarter, Tommy Trumbull caught a 3-yard touchdown pass from Bryce Young, bringing the score to 10-7 Panthers. With 14 seconds left in the half, Devontae Smith hurled in a 4-yard touchdown completion from Hurts, ending the half at 14-10 Eagles. With 2:49 left in the third, Chuba Hubbard ran it in for a 1-yard touchdown, but Pinheiro missed the extra point. When does that not happen nowadays?
Right.
Closing out the third quarter at 16-14 Panthers. With 13:45 left in the fourth quarter, Grant Calcaterra snagged a 4-yard touchdown from Hurts, while Saquon Barkley made the 2-point conversion, bringing the score to 22-16 Philadelphia. On a late defensive stop, Bryce Young's pass was incomplete to Adam. I'm hooked on a Thielen, or more than a Thielen. And the Philadelphia Eagles held on to win the game 22-16. For Bills fans, that's one of the most infamous scores in Bills playoff history, but we don't need to talk about that. So, Joe, what did you think about Bryce Young's stellar play again this week and almost winning the game against the Eagles? Because he's put them in a position to win these games, but they're still kind of a young team in their second year of a rebuild. They need to learn how to finish these games. But what do you think of the growth of this young man after he was benched in the first two games?
Yeah, it's funny how the conversation is a lot different than it was week 2, week 3 of the season. People had written off Bryce Young. People are saying he's never going to make it in the NFL. He was benched, right? I mean, he was basically dismissed by NFL followers, around the country here. And give a lot of credit to him. I mean, he didn't give up, and he got back in there. And again, he almost beat a Super Bowl contender here, and he's come close in other games, and they've won a couple of games here. So instead of a guy who's on his way out of the NFL and one of the biggest busts, potentially in recent memory, we're going the other way here, and he's making strides. And I haven't heard anything, but the Panthers are, I'm sure, thinking that he's at least, part of the plan for next season going forward, if not the plan. So I think you have some optimism in Charlotte there, in Carolina. Give him a lot of credit for, keeping his team in this game, and they could have won the game. Again, good teams figure out ways to win. Now, I was a little disappointed with this result. I had the Eagles in 12.5, and they didn't cover that. I had A.J. Brown to score a touchdown. That didn't happen. These weird receivers, well, not so much Devontae Smith, but the other guy that scored. I'm like, oh, they scored a touchdown. I was like, who is it, A.J.? And it's like, who the heck is this? So that's just me and me personally here, but they still pull it out and found a way to win. Now, you were talking about Adam Thielen. Continues to show up and, continues to be a big boost here for Bryce Young. So Adam Thielen, 9 catches for 102 yards. So definitely a go-to guy, certainly somebody helping the quarterback out here. So again, I think there's reason for optimism. I don't know, again, what the Panthers' plans are or how they're going to proceed. But certainly if they were thinking about proceeding in a different direction, I think Bryce Young is making that awfully difficult.
Yeah, like I said, the Panthers, I think, are doing a good job. Even last year, they're drafting some young talent like Jonathan Brooks and Xavier Leggett and everything like that. If David Tepper, who's trying to be like Dan Snyder 2.0, except not running his team like a fantasy and actually letting his team build through the draft, if he could stay out of it and let Canales continue to coach, maybe they finally become one of the better young teams in the league. Who knows? Or at least a competitive young team. Right.
And you got a good running back there too, in Hubbard. So they have that nucleus there. And again, you want to see the owner just kind of stay hands off and let the guys that are supposed to be running the team, do that as far as making the decisions anyway. So we'll see what happens there. But then don't be surprised if Carolina wins more games before the end of the season. I don't know what their schedule looks like exactly, but wouldn't be surprised if they pulled another game or two out.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, I like Canales as their coach too. I actually think I said it in my article. I said that was a good hire. You just have to watch out for the owner. And I said, other than that was a good hire for them.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that.
Mm-hmm. And remember, he was the offensive coordinator and coached Baker Mayfield in Tampa. So he knows a thing or two about trying to develop quarterbacks. He can do that.
That's right.
So, but anyway, Joe, do you think the Eagles are still on track to take the NFC East? Because I don't think the Commanders are ready to throw in the towel yet, especially with the parity in the league.
Yeah, the Eagles are my pick to not only take the NFC East, but to take the NFC. So I still think I would be shocked if they did not win the NFC East. But and certainly the Super Bowl is going to be a much tougher road. But I still think they're fully capable of it, and they're still my pick to get there. So I think not only the division, which is imminent, but certainly getting back to the Super Bowl, certainly a goal for them, and even winning it. So we shall see. But it's only a matter of time before they take the division, and they're going to have to beat some really good teams, as we were talking about the Packers before. They're going to have to beat some really good teams to get to the Super Bowl. But they're my pick, and I'm going to stick with that.
Mm-hmm. Loyalty and sticking to your guns. That's the theme of the show.
That's it. If
unlike
I'm going to
some
go
people
down
in the baseball world, which I won't get into because that's
for another podcast, right?
Another podcast. Anyway, not going to name names, but anyway.
No, we won't.
Now drawing our attention to our game of the week, the 4:25 Sunday matchup between the 10-2 Buffalo Bills facing the battle-tested and better than 6-6 LA Rams in Inglewood, California. Or should we call them the Inglewood Rams, like you call them the Santa Clara 49ers?
Santa Clara, yeah. Although Inglewood's a lot closer to downtown Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm. It's still a suburb, though. But anyway,
True.
On a 70-yard drive, the Rams scored first with Kyren Williams from Notre Dame rushing it in for a 3-yard touchdown to bring the score to 7-0 Rams. With 3:27 left in the first quarter, Josh Allen took it in for himself on a tush-push play. This is a theme, folks. Mm-hmm. For less than a yard to not the score at 7-0. See, what happens is the Bills took a page from the Eagles. When you have a big offensive line and you have a quarterback that's like Jalen Hurts, but is bigger, you can run the tush-push with your offensive line effectively.
Yeah, somebody on TV called it like the snowplow, I think, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. With 13:40, tush-push play for less than a yard to not the score at 7-0. With 13:40 left in the second quarter, Joshua Carty kicked a 22-yard field goal to bring the score to 10-7 Rams. And here, folks, with 12:38 left in the second quarter, Jacob Hamill blocked Sam Martin's punt, and Hunter Long returned it for a 22-yard touchdown to increase the Rams' lead to 17-7. With 10:32 left in the second quarter, Allen threw a screen pass to Ty Johnson, allowing a 41-yard touchdown, cutting the Rams' lead to 17-14. At the end of the second quarter, Puka Nacua Matata rushed a 4-yard jet sweep to bring the end of the quarter to 24-14 Rams, or I should say the end of the half. Mm-hmm. Same thing. With 8:31 left in the third quarter, Williams scored a second touchdown for 7 yards, bringing the score to 31-14 Rams. With 4:04 left in the third quarter, Allen threw a long pass to Khalil Shakir for a 51-yard touchdown to cut the lead to 31-21 Rams. With 22 seconds left in the third quarter, Cooper Stanley Cup scored on an 8-yard touchdown pass from Matthew, or Cooper Cup of Coffee, scored on an 18-yard touchdown pass from Matthew Stafford, bringing the score to 38-21. With 14:29 left in the fourth quarter, Allen scored on his second tush push to bring the score to 38-28. With 8:53 left, Allen passed a fade route to the Barefoot Wonder, or as I call him, Tarzan, Matt Collins, for 21 yards, cutting the lead to 38-35. With 1:54 left in the fourth quarter, Nacua scored a 19-yard pass from Stafford, but Carty missed the extra point, bringing the score to 44-35. And as Andrew WK would say, when it's time to Carty, we will always Carty hard instead of party hard. With 1:32 left in the fourth quarter, Allen scored his third tush-push touchdown, albeit with the cost of a timeout, to cut the score to 44-42 Rams. That would bring us to the end of the game in a new NFL record for Allen of 3 passing and 3 rushing touchdowns in a game. So, Joe, what do you think about this exciting game, but poor play by the Bills defense, especially in the first half?
Yeah, we couldn't figure out what was going on with the defense. Was it the Bills defense that was having an off game? Was it the Rams offense that was firing on all cylinders? It was probably a combination of both. So, again, we said this backstage, and I'll say it here. Now, the defense, didn't play well, obviously, and the Rams just did what they pleased. But this could have ended in a major blowout. So I credit the Bills for at least, doing what they had to do to give themselves a chance to win, and they almost pulled it off. Now, can we say MVP, MVP, MVP? Because more and more each week, it's looking like Josh Allen is heading in that direction here. I believe he's the favorite to get it now. People were talking about Lamar Jackson. The only other player I can think of at this point that, could maybe win it besides Josh Allen is Saquon Barkley. But I think when you compare it here, I just think, it's the most valuable player. And I think Josh Allen is definitely the most valuable player to his team. Not taking anything away from Saquon Barkley, because earlier in the year, he was my pick. But again, Josh Allen is not only making a case for MVP, but he's pretty much cementing that case with games like this. 342 yards passing. I think he had like 82 yards rushing. 3 touchdowns in the air, 3 touchdowns in the ground. Now, I'm not a math teacher here, but that adds up, I think, to about 51 fantasy points. Again, we like to measure things that way. 51 fantasy points, give or take. Just an incredible game. And without him, that blowout that I was talking about definitely happens. Now, some concerning things here that I'm thinking and hoping is just a one-time thing. Josh Allen had his 82 rushing yards. The rest of the offense had 21. What happened to James Cook? I mean, is he having nightmares from being pulled in his very first game that was played here in Los Angeles? I don't know. I don't know what was the deal with him. Where was Ray Davis? I wasn't aware of anything with him.
It was more that they couldn't run the ball, and they didn't really try to establish the run with Cook because they let Allen play more like Superman in that game. I think it was a change in game plan with Joe Brady for this week.
All right, that makes sense, because you're right. They started running the ball early and they went absolutely nowhere. So an on-the-fly offensive change makes sense, and that's what you want to see, right? When something doesn't work, your ability to change on the fly makes you successful. So, it didn't matter in this case, but that's a very good point. Now, certainly the receivers, you talked about some of them here. As far as Khalil Shakir being the leader here with over 100 yards, a touchdown, 6 catches. Amari Cooper probably had his best game as a Bill, 6 catches for 95 yards, although he didn't score. But Mac Hollins and Ty Johnson each did. They had a receiving touchdown apiece. You look at it on the Rams side, and, I mean, they certainly showed up, as we saw. Again, it was a combination of the Bills' defense not playing so hot, but certainly the Rams' offense, which is a very good offense, by the way, firing on all cylinders. Matthew Stafford with 320 passing yards and a touchdown. Now, in my opinion, one of the most underrated running backs in the NFL that people really don't talk about is Kyren Williams. Now, he had 87 yards, which is good, but a couple of touchdowns, got some big runs when they needed him to. Definitely, I had my eye on him. I might have said this on a previous show. I wanted to get this guy on my fantasy team. I couldn't get him. But a great, not only fantasy running back, but NFL running back, and certainly positive impacts for the Rams. And again, very underrated. Nobody talks about Kyren Williams. Somebody that a lot of people do talk about, and will even more after this performance, was Puka Nacua. 12 catches, 162 yards, and a touchdown. And that racks up about 34 fantasy points there. Cooper Kupp, don't forget about him. 5 catches for 92 yards and a key touchdown there as well. So if you want to find some positive spots on the Bills defense, Rapp, Hamlin, and Bernard all had double-digit tackles. Although, somebody I was watching the game with kind of brought up a point here. If a guy like Hamlin is getting 13 tackles, that may not be a good sign, because that means the runnings are getting through, and it's the safety that has to make these tackles, right? So, that might not be such a good thing there. But again, good performances there. Now, another key, though, on back on the negative side, is the Bills did not have a sack and they did not have an interception. So that's another thing. They were unable to make key plays. There were so many times watching this game, and again, talking to the people that I was with here, is come on, a key turnover here would be great. Let's get a fumble. Let's get a sack. Let's get an interception here and turn the tide here. And that just never happened. So, that played a big part in there too. Now, there were, not much of a difference here in yards, like the overall yards. I mean, a lot for both teams. The Rams had 457 total yards. The Bills had 445. The big thing is, though, the Rams had 38 and a half minutes of time of possession compared to the Bills' 21 and a half. So that's a big key, and something we just talked about. The Rams' running game was working. The Bills was not. So the fact that the Rams were able to run successfully, they were able to keep possession of the ball and make the key plays, obviously, and get first downs. That certainly made a difference too. So again, I'll say it here, and I told other people that I talked to about the Bills here. This loss doesn't concern me too much. To be interesting to see. They're playing another high-powered offense, and in fact, a higher-powered offense coming up next week here. So we'll see how the defense reacts, and do they get dominated again, or do they make the necessary adjustments and make some noise against an excellent offensive team? So maybe if there's a concern, it would be that does the defense have another game like that in the future, especially in the playoff future? Or do they clamp down? Was just a mirage, and the Rams just made it work? Other than that, though, yes, the losing streak, or the winning streak rather, is over, but it doesn't concern me, and I still think the Bills are in very good shape here.
Yes, they are. So let's see. What did you think about the exceptional play from Puka Nacua during the game? I think you kind of touched on it, but go ahead.
Yeah, doesn't surprise me. I mean, he's clutch, and it's statistically, I don't know if he had many better games than this, but he's always there, and he's always making the big catch, and that's going to definitely continue. And he's been banged up a lot this year, but he looks healthy to me now. And certainly he's going to be very impactful. And again, you're watching him, you can't fall asleep on Cooper Kupp. I mean, he's having a nice comeback season. Just maybe when you thought, all right, maybe he's kind of on the downside, he's had a couple of great games here. And he's somebody that you still need to pay attention to. And as I mentioned, Kyren Williams, one of the unsung running backs in the league that certainly, makes impacts. And they got other guys, Corum, the new running back that they got there. From Michigan. He made some key plays, and he's only going to get better as time goes on here too. So definitely the Rams offense is clicking, and they might be starting to peak at the right time, and they're still within distance of their division. So it's maybe a little bit of an uphill climb as far as winning the NFC West, but certainly a playoff spot is a definite possibility here.
Mm-hmm. So, Joe, what do you think the Bills defense needs to do to bounce back to help beat the Lions next week? Maybe double team their receivers or tighten up their coverage? What do you think?
Yeah, that's kind of hard to do. And there's a reason I'm not an NFL coach, is because I don't have an answer to that question. So I don't know. I don't know what they have to do. And again, I think that the Lions offense has more weapons than the Rams offense does. So, the two-headed running back monster that the Lions have, and some good receivers, and one of the better tight ends in the league too. So it's kind of hard to double up on this guy when another great receiver is running on the other side. So I honestly don't have an answer to that. These guys know how to adjust. And I would not be surprised. I'll say this right now. I would not be surprised if they do make the adjustments and we see a big difference in the way this defense plays.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with that. And Joe, what do you think about that blocked punt? Do you think it was the turning point in that game for the Bills? Because I think it definitely didn't help.
Now, it didn't help. Now, the Bills maybe had some minor momentum at that point, and that just, completely eliminated that at the time. But they were able to recover and, again, get back in the game and, get to a point where they had a chance to win. But certainly it may be the key play. And again, I'm not too concerned. This is not something that happens a lot. You might have mentioned this either on the show here or backstage when we were talking about it before. It's not something that happens a lot with the Bills. You don't see their punts getting blocked. So, again, I'm not too concerned about that. I don't think it's going to become a regular thing, but it certainly made a difference in this game, and it could very well have been the key moment that sealed the victory, for the Rams.
Mm-hmm. So now it's time for us to pick our predictions for next week's matchup. If I remember correctly, in the beginning of the season, Joe, you picked that the Lions would beat the Bills. Do you still feel that way? And what's your prediction?
Yes, I'm sorry, Bills fans. I'm going to stick with that prediction. I knew the Lions would be a good team this year, but I did not know that they would be this good. And, upon saying that, I was kind of down on the Bills, and I had the Bills being a 10-7 team this year, and I did not see the Bills being as good as as they've been this year. So I think you're going to see another back and forth excellent game here, a classic game between two potential Super Bowl teams. This might not be the first time they play this season. Again, because both teams have a legitimate shot at the Super Bowl. My final score prediction, though, when it's all said and done, is I'm going to say Lions 28, Bills 24.
All right, and I'm going to go the opposite of you. I think it's going to be a classic game, like you said, a Super Bowl preview, possibly playing them down the line. But I think the Bills squeak it out. I think Tyler Bass kicks a game-winning field goal at the end, 27-24 Bills over the Lions.
All right, so we almost got the same score, just the opposite teams winning. Now, can the Bills win this game? Of course they can. I would not be surprised if they did. But I just think, the Lions are kind of like the NFC version of the Chiefs, it seems like, sometimes squeaking these close games out. And again, that's what great teams do. But I think the home field advantage just, plays into it a little bit. And just the Lions maybe get a couple of more breaks or something, and it goes their way. But, even though I'm predicting the Lions to win, I would not be surprised at all if the Bills were able to, to get this done.
Yep. There's the attitude you got to have.
That's right.
Yep. So moving on to the Sunday night competition, which we've been waiting all day for, because the tough get rough in a primetime fight between the 8-4 Chargers and the 11-1 Chiefs. With 10:05 left in the first quarter, Matthew Wright kicked a 47-yard field goal to bring the score to 3-0 Chiefs. With 7:47, no, not the Jet folks, left in the first quarter, Wright kicked his second field goal of the day, this time for 33 yards to bring the score to 6-0 Chiefs. With 40 seconds left in the half, DeAndre Hopkins scored on a 9-yard touchdown pass from Patrick Mahomes, and the score was 13-0 Kansas City at the half. With 7:12 left in the third quarter, the Gus Edwards, ran it in for a 3-yard touchdown, bringing the score to 13-7 Kansas City. Now, with 3:20 left in the third quarter, Quentin Johnson hauled in a 4-yard touchdown pass from Justin Herbert to give the Chargers their first lead of the game at the end of the quarter, 14-13. With 13:04 left in the fourth quarter, Wright kicked his third field goal of the evening, this time from 50 yards, to bring the score to 16-14 Kansas City, as their famous radio play-by-play announcer would say.
That's right.
With 4:35 left in the fourth quarter, Cameron Dicker hit a 37-yard field goal to bring the score to 17-16 Chargers, like Arnold used to say, Arnold Schwarzenegger, when he was governor of California. Go Chargers, go. As time expired, Wright kicked a 31-yard field goal, and it doinked, as Chris Berman would say, off the upright, and it went in, and the Chiefs squeaked out another lucky game out, 19-17. So, Joe, what did you think about the Chiefs eking out another win on the last play of the game, giving them their 9th AFC West divisional title?
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Now, I am sure that you and every single other NFL fan in the country, in the world, were absolutely shocked that the Chiefs pulled out another game like this. All right? I mean, were you just kind of like wondering what on earth is going on? I was like, man, I haven't seen this since last week, since 2 weeks ago, since 6 weeks ago. I mean, whatever. It just keeps
The list
happening.
goes on and on.
Right? I mean, it's almost getting comical now. And again, even though I hate seeing the Chiefs win, what do? You tip your hat. I'll say it for the 10,842nd time. Great teams find ways to win, right? And this team just keeps doing it. Now, the cool thing about this for us Chiefs haters here is eventually their luck might run out. I mean, this is happening how many times in the regular season? And I keep saying how, it's a different story in the playoffs, and nobody can beat this team. And I'm going to still stick with that. But I think, cats have 9 lives.
Yeah.
Like, how many lucky wins, like lucky, inexplicable wins does a football team have? Even one of the best teams ever. So I don't know. Their luck may be running out at some point, and maybe that'll open a door for the Bills or somebody else to move on. But just amazing how it happens in different ways. If it's this time, it was the Chiefs that hit the upright and it went in, right? Another time, it's another team that hits the upright and it bounces the other way, and the Chiefs win. Or a guy's toenail is on the out of bounds line, and the Chief would have caught the ball in the end zone, and they would have reviewed it and found a blade of grass between his heel and the outside line, and they'd win the game. So I mean, it's unbelievable how this stuff continues to happen, right? And the Chargers, I knew the Chargers were going to play them tough. These divisional opponents always seem to play well against the Chiefs. It's rare that they beat them. But I mean, the time of possession, I was looking at this, it was 31-29 Chargers. So basically the time of possession was even. How about this for total yards? Chiefs 298, Chargers 288. And both of them had 20 first downs, and neither of them had a turnover. So a very even game. Both teams deserve to win, but I'll say it for the 28,483rd time. Great teams find ways to win, and the Chiefs are just a little bit of a greater team right now than the Chargers.
With that being said, though, Joe, what do you think about the Chargers' dramatic turnaround in year one with Harbaugh? And do you think they could possibly, in the next few years, be able to compete with the Chiefs for the AFC West if they keep progressing like that? Because Harbaugh's eventually gotten his ultimate goal wherever he's been.
Yeah, Harbaugh's a winner, and I would not be surprised if they're competing for the division very soon. Now, we did a segment on our open mic show in the beginning of the season where we all, I don't know why we picked the Chargers in this case. Maybe there was some kind of debate on that. But the 4 or 5 of us that were in there at the time, we all went through the Chargers schedule and shared about where we thought they were going to be. And I said that they were going to be a 10-7 team and a playoff team. And it's kind of looking that that's the way it's going to turn out. I definitely think they make the playoffs, and not exactly a team I would look forward to playing and be paying attention, Buffalo Bills, because that could be your first round opponent the way things are going here. So, be careful, because the Chargers can beat anybody in the playoffs, including the Chiefs. So be careful of them now. I think they're going to be a dangerous playoff team. But going forward, I definitely think they, as soon as next year even, compete for that division.
Right. Now on to our last, but certainly not least game of the week. The 8:15 Monday night matchup. I can feel it coming in the air tonight.
We're going to call you Jamie Stapleton now.
Matchup between the 4-8 Bengals squaring off between the 5-7 Cowboys. On the opening drive of the game, the Cowboys finally scored their first opening drive touchdown of the season with an 11-yard pass from Cooper Rush to CD. Had a little lamb with 8:59 left in the first quarter, giving the Cowboys the lead 7-0. With 2:51 left in the first quarter, Joe Cool Burrow threw a 5-yard touchdown pass to Jamar Chase, which took 11 plays and 6:10 off the clock, tying the score at 7. With 6:26 left in the second quarter, Brandon Aubrey kicked a 35-yard field goal, bringing the Cowboys lead to 10-7. With 3:35 left in the second quarter, Chase Brown, what can Brown do for you, scored on a 19-yard touchdown pass from Burrow, giving the Bengals the lead 14-10. With 33 seconds left in the half, Cade, the noble Duke of York, kicked a 37-yard field goal to increase the Bengals lead and close out the half 17-10, Cincy. With 10:38 left in the third quarter, Brandon Cooks scored on an 8-play touchdown drive, taking off 4:28 off the clock, knotting the score at 17. At the start of the fourth quarter, Aubrey kicked his second field goal of the night, this time for 47 yards to bring the Cowboys lead 20-17. With 10:28 left in the fourth quarter, York, with his 10,000 men, kicked his second field goal of the night, this time from 29 yards, knotting the score at 20-all. With 1:09 left in the fourth quarter, Joe Burrow passed to Jamar Chase for a 40-yard touchdown to bring the Bengals lead to 27-20, and that's how the game would end. So, Joe, what did you think about the block punt that ended up costing the Cowboys the game? Did you see shaves of Leon Lent Thanksgiving Day versus the Dolphins?
Yeah, I didn't think about that, but it does make sense there. So, that's kind of tough to talk about the Cowboys and being relevant at this point. They did show up and play a good game here, though. This is two teams that were supposed to be playoff contenders and are not, but both teams still showed up to play, which was great. That's why, I thought it was an enjoyable game. It was an even game. It was tied and early. I don't understand my notes I wrote here, but the Bengals offense keeps showing up. I mean, Jamar Chase with another monster game, like 14 catches, 177 yards, 2 touchdowns. Again, I base it on fantasy points. That's about 44 after like 2 weeks ago on another primetime game. I think it was, he had like 50 fantasy points. Joe Burrow.
In my league, he had 81 and I lost because of it.
Oh no. I have Joe Burrow as my fantasy quarterback, and he continues to help me out here. 369 yards and 3 touchdowns. One developing running back here that I think is a positive light for Dallas here is Rico Dowdle. And again, kind of unsung in the beginning of the year, but now I think is starting to get noticed a little bit more. He had like 130 yards rushing. So a good game for him. So again, I like the fact that 2 disappointing teams here still showed up and played an entertaining game. We're both trying to win. Poor Cowboys still can't win at home. I think they did finally win a game there recently, but just such a difference between last year and this year. And they're still giving up 1 million points a game at home. So that's got to be disappointing for them as well. Now, I have a question. My friend Tom sent a question. He's like, hey, if you guys could address this on the show, that would be great. And I forgot to say it before when we were talking about the Bills and teams like the Chargers and Packers and things like that. Now, his question was, he said it almost wouldn't be a bad thing for the Bills if they ended up down in the 3rd seed instead of like 1st or 2nd, just because the road teams have been winning a lot more in the playoffs lately. Now, I'll say my piece, and then I'll ask you your opinion here. Now, I kind of disagree with that respectfully. I'm one of those that if it's a playoff game, and I don't care if the road team has won the last 95 games, I would still want to be playing that game on my home field and having every advantage that I could. But what do you think about that?
I definitely would want to play at home, because if we stayed the 2 right now, we would still have to play Denver, and even though Denver might be a formidable opponent, that would be a lot to ask for Bo Nix in his rookie year to come into snowy Buffalo and try to pull off a win there.
Right. Plus the 2 seed, you get 2 home games.
Yeah.
At least. I mean, if the number 1 seed gets knocked off, you might get a 3rd. But yeah. I think that, I think there's just more parity in the game, and you have higher quality teams getting there. Again, let's talk about some of the teams we discussed today. Besides Denver, who is a formidable opponent and no easy win, you got the Chargers. Now, the Chargers are going to be playing somebody on the road and can easily win that game. I mentioned the Packers earlier and the Rams potentially. They are going to be playing formidable opponents, but can easily beat them. So I just think that not so much that home field advantage in the playoffs is less valuable than it was before, but I think even these bottom seeds, these 6 and 7 seeds, are good teams, and there's just a lot less of a difference between a 6 and a 3 or a 7 and a 2 than there was, in the past.
I do agree with that, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because, like I said, these teams still got really good quarterback play too.
Right. There's not a single team, well, maybe a couple, I would say that, some of that I'd say I'd be totally surprised if they went to their conference championship game or even the Super Bowl. I think some, maybe like the Broncos or a team like that, not quite ready for prime time yet. Could they beat a first round opponent? For sure. But again, I just think there's less of a difference in quality between the top and the bottom.
And what it also has to do with, Joe, like I said, there's obviously, this is the salary cap. Like, I know some people on our show believe the salary cap's a myth. I don't personally.
It is in another sport.
Yeah.
We won't talk
I don't think it's a myth, because here's why. I think this year, from the winning to the losing teams, not one team was over the cap in 2024. And there's only like 3 teams that are going to be are projected to be over the cap next year. But I think they're going to clean that up. So I think as the years are going on now, you're starting to see like more of these playoff teams not have more parity in terms of their cap space. Like there isn't a disparity now between which team has more cap space and the other one's in cap.
Right. It's like that in every sport, right? And that's sarcasm included in that comment.
Hockey's the same way now too.
True.
Yeah.
I know other sports,
baseball, basketball, not so much, but
yeah,
they're getting there though. They're getting there though because certain teams are starting to operate like that though with some of these big contracts. But we'll see. Anyway, moving on back to our football regular schedule program. What did you think about Joe Burrow's play during the games? I know he gave you fantasy points, but talk about how do you think he went about having to win a game like that, especially having to hear the fact that his defense can't stop anything, but he's playing really well.
Yeah, and that puts a little extra pressure on him too, right? It's like you feel like, yeah, you have to be perfect. It's like in hockey, you know, when a goaltender has an offense, or even in baseball, a pitcher, that his offense doesn't score for him or doesn't score a lot of points or runs, it seems like there's a little extra pressure on the pitcher or the goaltender, you know, to feel like they have to be almost perfect. And I think maybe Joe Burrow would feel the same way. He's got to do everything right. And if he misses an opportunity or doesn't score, that can come back to haunt them because the defense isn't very reliable. Now, Joe Burrow is the type of player that I don't think lets that get to him. I think he thrives in that situation. He's always been clutch, and again, in leading the team to a Super Bowl not too long ago. So I think he thrives on that, and he relishes that opportunity. But at the same time, I think he's got to be feeling some pressure a little bit, because if he's not perfect, and if he's not, you know, kind of like with Josh Allen sometimes, right? If Josh Allen isn't Superman, he feels like that's it, they're not going to win. So I'm sure Burrow might feel the same way in some respects anyway. But again, I give him credit for showing up, and I give the Cowboys credit for showing up too. They could have easily, both of these teams could have just folded the tent and say, yeah, it's not worth showing up, whatever, then half-hearted it. But they didn't. And, you know, there were some mistakes and stuff, of course. But I was very happy with the fact that two teams that were supposed to be relevant and are not still showed up as if it was a relevant game. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate both teams for that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Joe, guess what? It is now that time in our show for a question of the week segment. Would you like to give it a try?
I would love to give it a try.
Okay, Joe, here's your question for this week. Can you guess this NFL team? They're two-time Super Bowl champs, but they also have the lowest win percentage of all time. Is it the Bears, the Saints, the Bucs, or the Dolphins?
All right, I think I got this one pretty good. It's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
You got it. It was the Bucs. Good job. How'd you come to that conclusion? I know you said I could pick your brain here, but tell us, how'd you get to that?
Yeah, the first thing was I usually have a pretty good idea of how many Super Bowls teams have won. Mm-hmm. And so I'm thinking about it at the time. I think the Bucs have won 2. And I know that many more seasons than not, the Bucs have had a losing record. In fact, their first 2 years, it took them, how many games? 14. They lost their first 14 games. There was still only 14 at the time as an expansion team. And then I think they lost their next 10 the next season before they ended up getting a couple of wins that year. Mm-hmm. So, but still, I know most years the Buccaneers have been insignificant and have had losing records. And I know they've only won 2 Super Bowls. So I say only 2 Super Bowls because a team we talk about every week still hasn't won any. So only 2 is still more than, quite a few other teams have.
Okay. Well, it looks like we come to the end of our show. So, Joe, where can we find you on social media? Get ready, folks, Tuesday, December 10th, 2024.
Ooh. Wow, Christmas Eve, 2 weeks away already. So I am on Joe Dale Sports on Twitter, X. And again, just a whole bunch of great sports going on right now besides football. you got a college football playoff coming up pretty soon, right? In about another week and a half. That's going to get started. And, a couple of my favorites, basketball and hockey, and now the college game getting going. So there is just a plethora of excellent sports to talk about here. And I put some of my 2 cents in on Joe Dell Sports on Twitter X.
Yep. Thank you, college football, for that 12-team playoff. I think it was a great thing they did for this year.
It is. And I think they got it right this year too.
Yep. So anyway, you can find me on Bill's Chat 1 at Bill's Mafia Chat, and also at Jamie Malloy, the unbiased journalist, at DJ Dog Tags on X and theforkball.com, where I write about all sports. Please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like, comment, and hit that bell for notifications. For more content on Driving to the Top Productions, please visit our YouTube page, Twitch stream, Facebook stream, X stream, or wherever you consume your podcasts. Thank you very much for listening. And remember, folks, only Josh Allen can score 3 rushing touchdowns and 3 passing touchdowns in a game, which set an NFL record. Only the Cowboys can lose on a block punt in old school Leon Lent type of fashion to possibly win the game. And only the Chiefs can doink the ball over the upright the exact way to make the ball go in for the win.
Right.
But one thing remains the same. Even in a Bills loss to quarter friend Chris Berman, nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. See you next week, folks.
Have a great week, everybody.
Bye.
To rock this place. Hey! Hey!